In August 2022, less than 3 years after incinerating $47 billion of investor wealth and leaving thousands of WeWork employees with worthless stock, Adam Neumann walked out of Andreessen Horowitz with a $350 million check, the largest single seed investment in the firm's history. Why does the world's most elite venture capital machine keep funding a man who already proved he can burn an empire to the ground? He didn't invent new software. He held 3,000 apartments hostage, and Silicon Valley eagerly paid the ransom. To understand the sheer scale of this heist, you have to look at the woman who ran the exact same playbook and failed. Elizabeth Holmes and Adam Neumann were mirror images, two charismatic saviors, two $40 billion empires, two humiliating collapses. Both sold transcendence. Both weaponized their own messianic narcissism, the delusion that they were spiritual leaders meant to elevate the world using other people's money. But today, in August 2026, Holmes is sitting in a Texas federal prison cell. Neumann is sitting in a Miami penthouse. The exact variable that separated them wasn't charisma. It was the asset class. Holmes promised impossible science. You can test a blood machine in a lab. When it fails, you go to jail for wire fraud. Neumann promised a vibe. He pitched a tech company, but he was actually just signing leases on office desks. At its zenith, Wall Street believed the hypnosis. They priced his desk rental business like it was Google. When the IPO filings dropped in 2019, the math was apocalyptic. The tech was a mirage. The money was gone. The wreckage crushed thousands of ordinary people who believed in the Messiah.
One former community manager told us exactly what the collapse felt like from the inside.
The federal government could not indict Neumann. You cannot subpoena a vibe. Overpromising community is not a federal crime. So instead of an orange jumpsuit, Neumann received a $1.7 billion golden parachute simply to walk away and stop damaging the brand. He vanished, but he was not hiding. He was quietly building a trap. While Elizabeth Holmes was fighting federal prosecutors, Neumann took his WeWork payout and went shopping. He systematically purchased massive residential high-rises in Miami, Nashville, and Atlanta. Before anyone realized what he was doing, he had secretly bought up 3,000 apartments across the United States. This was his point of no return. Creating a physical shadow portfolio he could use as leverage to force the venture capitalists back to the table. In August 2022, he flew to California. He walked into the headquarters of Andreessen Horowitz, the most prestigious venture firm on earth. Venture capital was bleeding. The crypto markets had just collapsed. Web3 was becoming a punchline. Marc Andreessen desperately needed a visionary. Neumann pitched him a new startup called Flow. He called it the future of living, a community tech platform that would revolutionize housing. But the pitch deck didn't sell software. It sold extortion. Neumann didn't build a new tech platform for Flow. He simply bought hundreds of millions in traditional real estate using his WeWork buyout, then wrapped it in a community tech narrative to lure Andreessen. If Elizabeth Holmes had secretly bought hospitals instead of faking blood machines, she might have survived. Neumann owned the buildings. The bricks were real. He had the physical assets the venture capitalists desperately wanted. He wasn't pitching a software startup. He was holding a 3,000-unit real estate portfolio hostage. And Silicon Valley eagerly paid the $350 million ransom to get a piece of it. If WeWork was the most humiliating disaster in startup history, why did the smartest investors in the room beg to be next? If you want to know how billionaires fail upward while retail investors lose their shirts, Built and Broken exposes these exact mechanisms every week. Subscribe. 2 years later, the cracks began to show. It is 2024. You wake up in Miami. The sun is shining over Biscayne Bay. You tap the Flow app on your phone to unlock your front door. It crashes. You are paying $4,000 a month to live inside Adam Neumann's apology tour. As Flow launched its first buildings like Miami Society by Skane in 2024, the revolutionary community was exposed. It was nothing more than a standard luxury apartment building with a buggy app, a yoga studio, and exorbitant rent. When Holmes's machines failed, she secretly patched them with commercial Siemens analyzers. When Neumann's community failed, he secretly patched it with ping-pong tables and kombucha on tap. But the venture capitalists didn't care about the residents. They cared about the valuation. They had valued Flow at over $1 billion before a single tenant moved in. Now, they needed more capital to keep the balloon inflated. Neumann knew exactly where to go. At the Future Investment Initiative in 2023, Neumann stood on stage, pitching the very sovereign wealth funds he had previously burned. He told them Flow would solve the global housing crisis. It was the exact same hypnosis he used in 2017. But the macroeconomic weather had violently changed. In 2017, money was free. In 2024, interest rates were crushing real estate. Commercial property values were plunging. Flow was highly capital-intensive. Buying physical buildings requires massive debt. Elizabeth Holmes went to zero because her tech didn't exist. But as interest rates peaked and the commercial real estate market froze, Neumann's investors realized they hadn't funded a tech revolution, they had just bought highly overpriced plumbing. Is Adam Neumann a misunderstood real estate visionary, or just the greatest hypnotist Silicon Valley has ever met? To see which empire crumbles next, subscribe to Built and Broken. Which brings us to today. It has been 4 years since that record-breaking seed check. Holmes is serving year 4 of her sentence in Texas. Neumann is collecting rent in Florida. Flow has not revolutionized the housing market. By August 2026, Flow remains a glorified, capital-intensive property management firm. It is growing slowly. It is burning cash. There is no exponential tech scaling. You cannot download an apartment. The grand illusion has finally settled into boring mathematics. When you look closely at the machine, the brilliance of the scam reveals itself. Venture capitalists gave money to Flow to manage buildings Neumann already owned. He effectively paid himself to be his own landlord, using Andreessen's money to do it. The venture capitalists knew this. Marc Andreessen knew this. So why did they write the check? Remember that $350 million ransom. We are about to find exactly what it bought. Venture capital isn't about funding sustainable businesses. It is about funding stories that can be sold to the next idiot. Holmes sold a story that could be disproven by a blood test. Neumann sold a story that could only be disproven by time. Proving the $350 million check wasn't an investment in software, but a desperate VC bet on Neumann's cult leader hypnosis. They didn't need a real estate manager. They needed someone who could pump a $1 billion valuation out of thin air. Silicon Valley didn't give Adam Neumann $350 million, despite the fact that he was a charismatic illusionist. They gave it to him exactly because he was. 2 charismatic founders, 2 $40 billion empires. One is in a cage, the other is your landlord. The only difference is what they chose to fake. If you want to know who is faking it right now inside the companies you trust, Built and Broken rips them apart every week. Subscribe.